and welcome to the closing of our 2016 RHY Grantee T and TA meeting conference. Yay! I want to yay to all of you all. I'm feeling very encouraged and happy about the T and TA that we have experienced over this last 3 days. I've heard some great input from you all. I really appreciate you stopping me to talk to me about the TA, what you liked, what could be better, what you'd like to see next year. I'm really happy about how open you've been. Many of you have been with me because that's how I learn, that's how we learn at the federal level, how we can best help you make your programs as effective as they possibly can. So I want to thank you for being open with me and friendly and candid. It's really made this experience for me a very, very pleasurable one this year. So I thank you for who you are. I thank you for your openness and your friendliness. And so before I introduce our closing speaker, Carissa, for the day, I want to also share some thank yous that need to go out for my staff. I want to thank specifically and particularly Chris Holloway, our central office runaway and homeless youth program manager, who was so instrumental in putting the agenda together. A lot of frustration often trying to get it just right for you, for the senior leadership, and so he was very instrumental in making this happen. So I want to thank Chris for all of his tireless work. I also want to thank, if you think the conference went very, very smoothly this year, we can attribute a lot of that success to this next person. Laura Watkins, who is our federal project officer for our RHY cooperative agreement, has been here since Saturday, making sure things that are happening very smoothly. And I have seen the evidence of that. So I also want to thank her. She's a part of our federal staff as well. And last but definitely not least, the RHY organization. RHY is FISB, but RHY is represented by Safe Place. Lori Jackson is the director and CEO, and so I want to thank her staff, Tammy and TC. You all know who they are. They've done an exceptional job this year, and I want them to know that we truly appreciate their efforts. They've been friendly, they've been responsive, and they've been very, 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 very open and helpful to making this event successful in my eyes. So I want to thank them and let them know that I do appreciate all the efforts that went into all the work that took place this year. And I really had a grand time on the beach. And once again, we did not pay for the fireworks, so your taxpayer dollars did not do that. Just want you to know. But I'm hoping you truly, truly enjoyed it because I did. So Dr. Risa Matthew will actually be doing the closing. She is the director, as you know, for the Runaway and Homeless Youth Program. She's one of my stellar managers. She works tirelessly for me. Risa needs to get some work-life balance. You know, we tell you to do that, but she needs some too, because she's working at 8 o'clock at night, and she's working, you know, at 6 o'clock in the morning. I get emails. And so I want to thank her as well for the leadership she's provided to the program. Risa, yeah. So now it's my great pleasure and honor to introduce our closing speaker. And when you hear Carissa's presentation, you will know she embodies the success story that supports research in your practice about how important permanency is in the lives of our young people to help them to success and independence and education, because this young lady has experienced everything that your young people are experiencing now. And she is a role model of success. So our young people, hopefully we still have some in the room, can see she has experienced the same things you've experienced, and she has attained the success that we all want for you because she had that caring adults in her life that provided to her permanency and connections to her potential. They helped her see her potential. And so that's who you all are. And that's why we continue and continue to hope you really believe us when we say up at central office in DC and in the regions that you are the heroes. You are on the front line, and you have a huge responsibility to providing that permanency in the lives of young people, to convincing them how awesome they are. And so oftentimes you do that even when you have family commitments going on or things going on in your life that don't always make you feel so happy. But you come in every day walking through those doors, and what you start thinking is, how can I help a young person know and realize their potential and to know how awesome you are? And that's not what we're doing in central office. We're helping, supporting you to do that, but you are the frontline heroes. And so we really, really want you to believe that. I want you to believe me when I say how much respect I have for what you do every day. So, so let me give you a little brief bio on Carissa. You will find her full bio in the program, and also there's a website if you want to know more about her story and her writings and her publications. There's also a link in there about that as well. 2012, Carissa started Runaway Girl Inc., a social purpose corporation to improve resources, networks, and responses to protect and care for survivors and victims of human trafficking. Runaway Girls model has helped to improve protocols and responses to all forms of human trafficking, and has provided funding for innovative solutions such as Ending the Game, an intervention curriculum developed by and for survivors of trafficking. Carissa's memoir, Runaway Girl, Escaping Life on the Streets, One Helping Hand at a Time, is the story of her journey of how helpful encounters with adults helped her strive to reach her own goals. Carissa is an accomplished attorney, advocate, author, and public speaker who lives her values through her work. Please join me in welcoming Carissa Phelps.
I don't think I need these, right? I'm on. So I can't stand behind one podium for too long. Do you guys okay with me walking around a little bit? Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you for saying all youth should strive to attain their education and do what I do, but every one of the youth that you work with is unique and is different. And I want us to keep that in mind as I speak, because they each have their own potential. They each have their own purpose, and they each have their own way. So, in my own story, I was told when I was 12 years old that I had potential. But I had to believe that. I had to believe that I mattered, that I could be someone. And at the time, when I was 12, I had been thrown out, I had been abandoned, I'd been left behind. And I met a person, his name was Ron Jenkins, who said to me, "You have potential." And for some reason, at that time when I was 12 years old, I didn't know exactly what that meant, potential. I kind of understood that I was someplace and I could maybe be someplace else. But it took a lifetime, really, the next 30 years of my life to figure out what that really meant. And I'm going to share with you some of that today and some of that journey. You each have an orange sheet of paper at your table, yes? That was distributed around. If you could pass those around, I would appreciate that. And you should each have writing, a pen, some sort of writing utensil as well at your table. And you are doing the perfect thing with your orange sheet of paper. So I don't want to get into that too much. If you can just fold your orange sheet of paper, if you hold it up, everyone can see you're going to fold it horizontal. You're holding it up horizontally, yes. Fold it in half. You're all going to be up here playing Jeopardy later, okay? Is that all right? You okay with that? So fold that in half, and on the left side of that paper, if you open it back up, it's like you have your own little book that you're writing. On left side of that paper, as I speak, as I talk, I just want you to write down some of the challenges, some of the negativity, some of the labels, some of the things that make us go to work every day. Some of those negative labels like delinquent, being locked up, being in juvenile hall, being a criminal, being a runaway. That could be seen as negative sometimes, right? And then on the right side of that piece of paper, if you could write the positives, the way that you would describe someone who had potential, smart, ambitious, outgoing, and you could do that throughout the afternoon. But this is my story. This is coming from nothing, feeling like nothing, to being someone. And it took a single individual, it took somebody saying, you have potential. And me understanding that that potential wasn't limited, that that potential meant I could go anywhere. If I could take you back to being 8. Do all of you remember being 8? We don't have any 7-year-olds in the room right now, right? So if I could just take you back to being 8. What grade is that? 2nd or 3rd grade. That time, possibly in your life, where your brain was developing and your prefrontal cortex wasn't quite there to tell you that you couldn't do everything that you wanted to do. You might have seen a certain movie that comes to mind. What was that? E.T. Okay. What did Elliot know he had to do? He had to save his friend, E.T. And I don't know if you guys have the doll and everything that that gave you that, but bring back that feeling of what Elliot knew he had to do at 8 years old. Bring that feeling up and that image that we could do anything. That's the feeling that you have to have to succeed, I believe, in this work. That's the feeling you have to have. And so I went back to 8 years old and I started thinking about that moment where I believed so much. I believed I could do anything. And even back to 8 years old, I had a feeling that nothing could stop me. Even back to 8 years old. And this is where I think my story might be a little different than others. Because between 0 and 3, I was held and I was loved and I was taken care of by an older sibling. Because during my mother's pregnancy, she didn't use, she didn't drink, my dad didn't smoke cigarettes or anything like that, because I had these opportunities set up for me. So that when I made it to 8 years old and my brain was forming and I was deciding what I could do and what I couldn't do, all these possibilities were there. And the first possibility that I realized was when I had the opportunity in 3rd grade to take part in a talent show. You guys remember those days? Yes? The nervous wreck you could be when you're 8 years old and you're going to do a talent show. And this talent show involved a whole class. It was the whole classroom of us. And for an 8-year-old girl, it was a big deal. We had a cheerleading competition. And we were going to be on a big auditorium stage, and we had to come up with our own outfits. And for me, that was difficult. Maybe for some of the youth that you work with, this could be difficult. It could be an awesome moment that you're really excited about and nervous for, but what am I going to wear? How do I match everybody else? I worked on my outfit. I got things from my sister's closets that I could put together so that I had all the colors and everything right. And then the one item that was missing that wasn't in our household, even though we had 10 kids running around, was a set of pom-poms of a certain color that I needed to get. And so I asked my mom, and I said, Mom, I need to get these pom-poms. And she said, well, you're going to have to do chores, right, to get the money to get your pom-poms. Okay, I'll do the chores. So I did my chores so I could get some money to get my pom-poms. And then she said, I can't take you. I'm too busy. I have the other kids that I have to worry about. But I had just seen this movie where Elliot rode his bike across the moon. So, I mean, I could do this. I could get pom-poms if I needed pom-poms, right? So I went out, and this was before the internet, right? I had to open up a phone book, a Yellow Pages phone book, and I started looking at all the types of places that might carry pom-poms and calling on a phone, a landline. Remember when they had those too? And I finally found the place that would have the pom-poms for the money that I had to get, and it was all the way across town. And for an 8-year-old to ride their bike alone across town, right? That was a big deal, and it was a big deal for me. And when I did it, when I rode my bike from one dirt field in Lancaster, California to another dirt field in Lancaster, California, to go and buy my pom-poms, and I was able to bring them home, it gave me a sense that I could do something. And that was small, but it was major too, because I could hold on to that later. And even though I would become a runaway girl, even though at 12 years old I would become too complicated for my parents to handle, and I would have all those labels of being a delinquent, of being an uncontrollable youth, out of control. In California, of being labeled a 601. Even though I had all those challenges and all the things privately that had happened to me that had driven me to that place to want to run away, I knew that if I set a goal, I could get there. I could do it. So in that way, I was fortunate. And I have to go back to that place. I have to go back to that place, and I encourage you to go back to that place where we did believe, because that's the place in our heart where we see clearly. That's the place where we can reach our own potential. Because it's not just about you reaching the youth so that they could reach their limitless potential, but it's about you reaching yours as well. So going back to that place for me has been a blessing. It's been something that has driven me forward. And that place in our heart where we see clearly is where we're starting this morning. I know many of you go through the essentials. You go through and you provide the housing, and you provide the opportunities, and you provide the connections, and you provide the purpose for youth who do not have these things provided for them. And that is critical, and it's important. But we can't forget where they're starting, where I started on the left side of that page, feeling like nothing, having everything stripped away from me, being told at 12 years old that I didn't matter to anyone, not to my mother, not to my father, not even to the kidnapper, not even to the people that were abusing me. So taking someone from zero, from feeling like they are nothing, to being someone is a huge opportunity. And it wasn't mentioned in my bio, but I happen to have a math background. I'm a little bit nerdy. And I'm fortunate for that because I had somebody plant that seed when I was very young that I could do math. And in mathematics, there's this concept, and I started with it. It's an infinity, right? And how big is infinity? How big is infinity? Is it the biggest? Is it the largest number you can have? What if I said no? What if I said that the largest amount you can have is actually between 0 and 1? That size between 0 and 1, between going from nothing to something, is actually bigger, it's greater, it holds more than So this is a math concept. I could actually put up the proof, but then for sure you would go to sleep, for sure. You wouldn't want to stick through the whole hour and a half, I don't think, of showing the proof that between 0 and 1, with one life, one person, you make the greatest impact. Taking someone from feeling like nothing to feeling like someone. I know that many times in my own life when I'm out there doing this work and I'm inspiring people, it's always, how many people have you helped? How much have you done? How much are they earning? And everybody wants to know the quantity. And sometimes it feels like even if I told you 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, would it matter? If I could tell you about one person going from feeling like nothing to one, I feel like I've done my job. And that's what I've learned. My journey was somebody taking me from feeling like nothing to feeling like somebody. When I started working in the field of anti-trafficking, I wasn't a social worker. I wasn't a therapist. I was a math graduate with a BA in mathematics. I had a law degree where I focused not on any kind of law that would be applicable in this space. I focused on mergers and acquisitions and business law. And I had an MBA. I was working on private equity and funding and business problems and business solutions. So when I started working on this, I was taken into it because somebody learned my story. And they said, at one point you were here and now you're here. How did that happen? How did that happen? And I had to go back, to my childhood and think about, when did I start feeling like nothing? When did I start feeling like nothing? That was the first thing. And it was when a lot of bad things happened in my life all at once. It was when a lot of bad things happened. And I know that you have youth who don't share everything with you. They don't tell you right away where they're coming from and what they've been through and what just happened on the streets last night. They don't tell you all those things that make them feel like they're nothing. They won't even tell you that they feel like nothing, because I was there. And it took somebody, right, believing in me, not just one person, but many, many people, to get to a place where I was. And so somebody saw that story and they said, you know what, this story, it needs to be told. And people started sharing my story and they started telling my story. And when I would go out in my field, in my work field that I was doing, and I would go out and go to these events, people would introduce me and they would say, oh, here's Carissa Phelps. She's the former child prostitute. And now everybody shakes their head and says, no, there's no such thing as that. But that's where we were starting. That's where we were starting. That's what the label was on me, was a former child prostitute. So this was in 2006, 2007. And I realized that I did have a story to tell, that I didn't have all the answers. But the story that I had to tell, and get up here and stand up and say to everybody was, there is no such thing, right? A child is not. A child is not, and we can't do that to them. We can't condemn them in that way to that. So I went out and started sharing my story and talking more and more about what worked for me. There isn't one solution. There isn't one way to solve the problem. And I learned this when I look at the way that other people approach human trafficking. So there was a young girl, her name's Vivian Har, and at 8 years old, she saw a picture of slavery, a picture of children in slavery. And when she saw that picture of children in slavery, she must have felt a little bit like Elliot. She must have felt a little bit like, wait a minute, I need to save these other children who should be playing, who should not be condemned to labor. And she saw this picture and she said, I didn't think of the things that I couldn't do. I thought of the things that I must. So child slavery is happening all over the world, including here in the United States. And what Vivian knew before she was even an expert in the space was this was wrong. And so she went to her parents and she said to them, I have to do something about this. And this is an important key point, that when she went to her parents, they didn't say, oh, honey, you're 8 years old. You can't do anything about this. No, they said, well, what would you like to do? Well, like most 8-year-olds, right? She wanted to do a lemonade stand. And with that lemonade stand, her goal was to raise $100,000. She wanted to raise $100,000 to put an end to child slavery, because at 8 years old, $100,000 can end child slavery, right? So she was going to raise $100,000, and she was going to contribute it to ending child slavery, and she was going to do it with lemons, with a lemonade stand. So Vivian went out, she started her lemonade stand, and she raised the money. It took 365 days. It took about 30 days, maybe even longer, for people to catch on to what she was doing. But every single day she went out and sold lemonade. Every single day she went out and sold lemonade until she raised $100,000. Until she raised $100,000 so she can contribute it to an organization that ended child slavery. Today, Vivian, I think she's 12 years old. She's still on the fight. She's still inspiring other young people to do that. And Vivian, her parents, her support team, the people around her, believed in her when she said, I think I can do something to end child slavery. And this is the difference sometimes when we're working with young people. This is the difference sometimes that I see. Because how could Tina, someone who has been booked 8 times over a 1-year period, who didn't have a lemonade stand, how could she be taken and told she has potential to change the world? Given opportunity, given something to believe in. How could we take someone who's been so beaten down and have them feel like Vivian again? That's our challenge. Because you're not going to be there at every single turn with the young person that you're assisting or that you're staffing, you're case managing, and your whole staff is working with. You're not going to be there every single time. So you must plant this seed of potential. And it is hard to do. It is hard to do. I've seen many people step up to the plate and many people walk away from the plate. It is not an easy job. But before you throw in the towel, I'm going to tell you about a couple people in my life. One was Ron Jenkins. And when Ron met me, he was a recent college graduate from Fresno State. He had been a star football player at Fresno State. His dream was to go to the NFL. His dream wasn't every day to walk into a juvenile hall facility and to inspire young people, but that's where he ended up. He had his opportunity to be drafted to the NFL. And when he went through the medical review, they checked him from head to toe. And when they got to his feet, they said, I'm very sorry, but we're not qualifying you for this. Ron had been in foster care since he was 2 years old, since his mom had passed away from breast cancer. He had been in foster care that whole time with various placements, and he had grown very rapidly. He's a big guy, football player. And as he was growing, no one had bought the right size shoes for him. And so his feet held him back from the NFL. And when he called a dear person in his life who had become like a father to him, when he called him to break the bad news, because this person had gone to every single game of his from high school to junior college through college, had come to every single game. When he called Harrell to say, I can't make it to the NFL, Harrell did not say, that's awful. Ron said, it's my feet are bad. And Harrell said, I think your feet are pretty good. They got you through high school, through junior college, through college. Now you have to figure out where they're going to get you next. And I benefited from that because Ron walked into juvenile hall. And he didn't walk in with his head down and feeling like he was just taking a backup job. He walked in there proud. He walked in there happy to be a part of our lives. And when he sat down across from me and said to me, you have potential, I believed him. I believed him. Even without knowing his full story, I believed him. He was the person who would start to take me from zero to being someone. He was the person that gave me the very first positive word that I could put on the right-hand side of that page. At 12 years old, I had something. I wasn't just a label. I wasn't just a child prostitute. I wasn't a delinquent. I wasn't a 601 or a 602 in his eyes. I wasn't a criminal. I was someone who had potential. So that was my very first positive word. And what a great word that is, because it makes you feel like you could do anything. Years and years later, when I reached back out to Ron and I tried to connect with him, I had to find him. And I was so happy I did. He called me. I left a message for him at work, and he called me back. And he was so excited to talk to me, he wouldn't even let me get in the words, which I wanted to tell him, which was, I'm graduating from your university. I'm graduating from Fresno State with a degree in mathematics, and I have a 4.0, and I'm summa cum laude, and my name's going to go up in lights where your names were in lights. And I was so excited to tell him this, so excited. And he wouldn't let me talk. He just kept talking. He said, I've been looking everywhere for you. I've reached out, tried to find your mom, called old numbers, checked the prison rosters. And I said, well, thank you for not telling me what kind of potential you thought I had, right? He just said, you have potential. So I finally had a chance to tell him all this great success and why I was reaching out to him and why it was so important for me to tell him that he had lived in me that whole time, that he had helped me go from the place of feeling like nothing to the place of feeling like someone finally. And he said to me in reply to all of the things I said, I'm graduating from Fresno State, I'm so excited to share this with you. He said, I don't care. What? I don't care, because you could have called me from prison, and I would be just as happy to hear from you. What that would do for me, not just in that moment, but for the rest of my life, I feel, is tell me that no matter what letters I put at the bottom of my name, no matter what accomplishments I have, I do matter. I do matter no matter where I am in the world. And he truly planted that seed and continues to grow and nurture me like a daughter. So he made me a little bit crazy, right? He made me feel like I could do anything. He set me on fire. And I think sometimes we're afraid to do that with young people because we're afraid of what they'll do. We're afraid of what they'll do. But let us take on the world. Let us take on these issues. Give us the opportunity to take ownership in our communities, to find answers to the problems, to come up with solutions. No, we won't always do it your way. We won't always make it the exact way that you would have had it planned out. But have that inside of us. Each one of the young people that you work with have the potential to lead in their communities. For me, being in the classroom was important. From a young age, even. It wasn't always positive, but something inside of me, I knew I could do something. First, a multiplication table. That's where it all starts. First, a multiplication table. And then algebra. And algebra, for me, the opportunity to do algebra came in a very different type of place when I was locked up in juvenile hall. And I say it was the opportunity to do algebra because, most people feel like it's a sentence to do algebra, right? But for me, it was an opportunity to do algebra. It was an opportunity to learn math that came in juvenile hall. And what an odd place, right? For a 13-year-old at the time, I was 13, to learn math in juvenile hall. But I can't tell you how special it felt when a teacher photocopied a math book, because in juvenile hall, I don't know if you know this, but you can't have the hardcover books, not in most of the juvenile halls, so that's why paperback, I was so happy that it came out. So in juvenile hall, you can't have the hardcover books, so this teacher knew that I was ready for algebra and didn't have an algebra curriculum for me. So she saw my potential. You could do math. You could do algebra. And she photocopied an algebra book. And she would do it. Do you guys remember your math books? Anybody? Not all social workers in here. Some of you are researchers, right? So she photocopied it, lesson, problems, and then she would go to the back of the book for the answers to the odd problems or the answers to some of the problems, usually the even problems, and she would photocopy that together, and she'd bring me 3 chapters at a time, and I would start to work on algebra. I would start to work on algebra, and I would feel accomplished when I left juvenile hall because she gave me a note saying I had passed. Now, I had missed 7th grade. I was on the streets. I missed 8th grade. I was on the streets. She was saying I could go into 9th grade in geometry. She was opening a door, opening a portal, really, for me to get on a path to meet my potential. So again, what I could do at that point felt limitless, but I didn't do everything right. And this is the thing that I work on now in my life is I'm going to hold people in this space, in this great space, in this positive space about you have so much potential, you could do anything. And they're not going to do everything my way. They're not going to do it the way that I would do it. They're not going to do it on the time frame that I would want them to do it. Because actually, after she gave me that note, it didn't fix everything. I had to go back when I got out of juvenile hall. I had to go back home. I had to go back to the abuse. There was no place that would take me, being a chronic runaway, being who I was with all the labels that I had, even with this note. So I ended up back on the streets again. But I had 2 things. I had potential, and I had algebra. When I was writing my memoir, my story, I remember frustrating the publisher so much because they said, when are you just going to make it out, right? When is everything just going to be good in your life? And in my story, I said, well, that's not the way it goes, is it? It is not such a clear path for anyone between 0 and 1. There's lots of directions that we could go. And mine were very much, very, very much up and down. I held on to potential. And I held on to the belief that I could do something. I used algebra as a ticket to get me back into high school, to a 1-room trailer, continuation high school, into into junior college, into college, into law school, and into business school. But it started with that letter from Mrs. W. The very first time I was ever asked to speak at an event, it was at the opening of a brand new juvenile hall in the town where I was locked up in Fresno County. And they had spent, the county board of supervisors and everyone had gotten behind a big project to build a new juvenile hall. And I see $140 million project. And they were very excited about it. Me, I walked around and I saw cells and I saw things that I didn't really like, but I was going to be helping to open up this juvenile hall. Kind of ironic, right? I know. But they brought me in, and when they asked me to speak, the first person that I started looking for, because I'd already connected with Ron, the first person I started looking for was Mrs. W. Do you know how hard it is to try to find somebody when you only know the first letter of their last name? She had a complicated last name, so she had us call her Mrs. W. in juvenile hall. So I called up, friends. I could talk to people that were in admin. Can you look at the records? When I was in juvenile hall, who was the teacher? Who was the math teacher? Nobody could find her. I went up and I gave my speech and 15 minutes of inspiration to get everybody going and started that night. And when I went to sit down at my table, a gentleman came up to me. And he pulled this letter from his pocket. He said, "Do you remember this name?" And immediately I stood up. Mrs. W., Mrs. W., where is she? He said, "She's at the back of the room right there." She didn't want to break any confidentiality, but when you mentioned her in your speech, she felt like she could connect with you, and I felt like she must. And so I went running towards the back of the room, embracing Mrs. W., and she had this letter. And she told me, she said, when I started teaching at juvenile hall, she was in her early 30s. She had gone back to school. She had gone to junior college. She had gone to earn her teaching credential as an adult, going back to school. She goes, when I first started, she goes, I went because someone told me when I was young that girls can't do math. And I needed to do math. She said, and I went back to school and I did really well and I had all my credentials ready and laid out and I went to get a job. But because of my age, nobody wanted to hire me. And she goes, and one day I was doing laundry and I was really frustrated and I was throwing clothes from, the washer to the dryer and just thinking to myself, God, why did you do this? I mean, why did you put me through all of that just so I could be doing laundry? And at that moment, her phone rang. And it was the juvenile hall calling to offer her a job. And Mrs. W. didn't say, no, thank you. She said, when do I start? And it wasn't long after that I met her. She only spent a couple of years in juvenile hall. She was leaving juvenile hall around the same time I was leaving juvenile hall. And Ron knew this. And he said to me, you need to write a thank you letter to Mrs. W. I said, what? Right? She's just doing her job. No, you need to write a thank you letter to Mrs. W. She did more than her job. I don't know how many of you remember your math teachers. Do you remember your math teachers? Or are in love with them still? I was a math teacher for a little while, so I know how many of you love math teachers. It's not that many. But, but she gave me that ticket. And I gave her a letter. And in that letter I said, Dear Mrs. W., thank you for believing in me. I needed it. Today, I'm doing algebra. Tomorrow, maybe I'll be a doctor or scientist. I did not say lawyer. Maybe I'll be a doctor or scientist. whatever I decide to be, I won't forget your class, especially you. Sincerely, Carissa, a girl with the potential to go anywhere she wants. She pulled out that letter because she always kept it with her. Because for 16 years, that letter was in her Bible, in her bag. And it was a constant reminder to her of why she did her job. She is amazing. She doesn't join me in the room anymore because I lost her. But I was able to reconnect with her. I was able to reconnect with her and to have her come back into my life and to tell me once again the power we all have. How could I, a kid that was just learning algebra, make her feel like someone, make her feel like she mattered in her work and in her job, and give her the feeling that she can go on to meet so many young people where they were at and take them to meet their potential. This has been the story of my life. Not just one person, but many people who came into my life, who planted seeds into my life, and where something happened, where it wasn't just one way. And I know you know this from the work that you do. It wasn't just one way. It went in both directions. It was Ron. It was Mrs. W. It was Barbara, later a teacher's aide, who said, you know, I see you working so hard to graduate from high school, but I know when you go home, you don't have a table to sit at. You don't have a place to do your homework. And she gave that to me. And all these things came together in a magical way where I could finally meet my potential. Going from 0 to 1, if you can look back at your papers, please. Going from 0 to 1 is not easy. It's not a straight path. It's not a straight path. If you could take those papers for me for 1 second, and then on the back of them, I just want you to write down every negative thing you've ever heard about youth. Every negative thing you've ever heard about youth and the youth that you work with. You can't fill up the paper, right? No. So you write down those negative things, because those are the things they hear on a day-to-day basis. Not just being told to them directly from people, but in people's eyes, in their behavior, in how they treat them, like they are nothing and like they don't belong. Now you take that piece of paper, please, take that piece of paper, and I want you to crumble it up. What does that piece of paper look like to you? That's how it feels to feel like nothing, to be nothing. Usually in my trainings, we stand up and we even stomp on the paper. We step on it. We understand where we're starting at. Now take that piece of paper, please, and I want you to undo it. Now this is your chance to tell me, what do you see about that paper? Potential. Potential. That paper has potential. What else do you see about that paper? Can you describe that paper? What did it look like in the beginning? Does everyone have a blank sheet of paper? Yes? A blank sheet of paper, okay? We pretty much all have the same sheet of paper before, right? The scars, the creases, are any of them exactly the same? Are any of your papers exactly the same after that exercise? You learned this like when we did snowflakes, right? A long time ago. Your papers are all different. What else do you see about the papers? Resilience. Why, Mark? Why do you see resilience? It's still strong. It's still together. It almost feels like what? It's stronger, huh? Somehow? After that crumpling and pulling it out, it feels like it's stronger. You still see the potential in that paper. You see the scars. You see the things that make it stronger. You still see the opportunity. Are the words still on that paper? The words are still on that paper. And both the negative and the positive are still on that paper. All that potential is still on that paper. That's our reminder of where we're starting and where we can go in terms of our potential. For me, I didn't think I would make such a great impact in the world. That wasn't the goal I started with. I was going to graduate from high school, move from a zero income bracket to a $12,000 a year income bracket. Then I was going to go to college, become a teacher, maybe go on to graduate school, get a master's in education or something to that line. But I saw that there was so much potential that was out there that was not being tapped into. I went into the juvenile halls and I sat down across from other girls. And those girls told me, they said, me too. Your story is my story. That happened to me too. And they were locked up and they were in juvenile hall. And I sat across from them and I said, okay, yes, you too, meaning that if I'm looking at my past, you're looking at your future. And I got very, very busy doing that because there's a lot of young people who need to hear that message. But I realized that we could have more people be successful and get out there and spread that message, that they have potential, that they can be somewhere, that they're not trash, that they're not being thrown away, that they will be taken with us. I never dreamed that I would be able to change the way that people treated kids who were being locked up. When I first went into the juvenile halls, when I first just went in to share my story, I was surprised that kids were being arrested and charged with prostitution. And like that picture I showed you earlier, every arrest, every time was more beat up, more feeling like they didn't belong, more feeling like they didn't matter and they were not seen. I didn't know that I was going to be able to make an impact how people treated young people in juvenile hall. I just knew that for this one person who I was sitting across, it was wrong. It was wrong for us to criminalize her. It was wrong for us to be arresting her and charging her at 14 years old with prostitution, with things that had been done to her. And it was the power of that interaction, that one-to-one interaction of understanding that it was wrong for her, that fueled me to go in front of politicians, to go in front of county supervisors, to go in front of social welfare directors, to fight for there to be a change. When Mrs. W. gave me that ticket, she wasn't saying, and you'll go on to change the world in this way. She was saying, here's a door that's open for you. Girls can do math really well, actually. We can do math. We can do things. You can do something else. When Ron each one of you, because of the unique work that you get to do, that you get to be a part of, each one of you have limitless potential. You get to see this larger infinity happen every single day for one human being, for that person that is across from you, from that person that you inspire, that you get them to believe, I am not nothing. I am someone. The power in that is greater than all the numbers we're going to collect and all the data that's out there that says we're making an impact. Getting someone to believe they're someone. That's your credential. That's what makes your job important. And that's what gives them and you a limitless opportunity to change the world, to make an impact. You learned so much at this conference. I was able to go through all of your breakouts and the classes and what you were able to do and see. But what you already know is the most important thing you get to take away. What you already know in your heart to be true. What you already believe about the work you do and why you do it is going to make the difference and make the impact. It didn't seem surprising to me when the Runaway Homeless Youth Conference called Runaway Girl to make a closing speech for you. I mean, there is a connection. But the real reason I'm here is not about me. It's about you. It's about you understanding that every day when you get up and you go into work, whether or not it was your dream job or you thought it was going to be the NFL and now it's a juvenile hall facility, wherever you are showing up across from that young person or your staff who get to work with those young people directly, you are letting them know they matter, giving them an opportunity to believe in themselves, and then stepping back and seeing what they can do. Thank you so much for sharing this morning with me and for allowing me this opportunity to go basically virtually across the country with this message and make an impact. Thank you. I did leave an opportunity for Q&A. If there are questions, besides how did you do it and how can you write a handbook for it? No. But if there are any questions, I'm also happy to stay later and talk with people about opportunities to make an impact, what's out there, what's available. But really, the message is about what you're taking with you in your hearts from here. So I thank you. And if there is anything that anybody would want to ask, I know there's usually about 2 burning questions that people have to know from my story that I don't say.
Hi, I'm from California too.
Hi.
Where are you based out of now?
I live in Pismo, Central Coast, California, Shell Beach. Yeah, it's where I came connected with God there on the cliffs when I was 19, and that's where I went through my EMDR too, in case anybody wants to know my therapy checklist. The other question usually that comes up, the other burning question is, how is your relationship with your mother? To which I usually say, well, how's your relationship with your mother? Right? There's lots of great dynamics between parents and children that I don't have to own all to myself just because I was abandoned or I was left alone or I felt a certain way when I was a kid. There's lots of challenges we all face. So instead of feeling unique about it, I try to feel like we're more the same.
Hi, I am Queen Deja Clay. I'm from Houston, Texas. And I just want to know, have you ever tried the paper exercise with a $20 bill?
Oh, the $20 bill. That would be nice, huh? Could I get arrested for that if you guys write on it or stomp on it? No? Okay. As long as that would be nice. If everybody pulled out a $20 bill too, then we could send it into a pot for the, yes. I can try that. There's not many people who want to write on their $20 bill, right? From the start. So the other burning question usually is, and how's your love life? Now that you've gone through all that and you've had trafficking happen and all these things, and besides reading the book and finding out, right? You have to know that my response would be, how's your love life? Because again, we are not so unique, us runaway and homeless youth who become adults. We share a lot of the same issues that you do. So be straightforward, be open about it. Be open. I'm very open about my spiritual journey, my relationship journey, everything, because they're going to be on the same path as you, not a different path. If they're going to be on a different path, why are you going to work every day? Why are you doing this job? So thank you so much for your time again, and I look forward to connecting with you all. Thanks.
So, Carissa, thank you so much for your powerful testimony and for the work that you're doing with young ladies and helping them realize that they have potential. So can we just get another round of applause for Carissa? And so I have to say, wow, this has been a really wonderful conference. And I have to also say that this is my 5th Runaway and Homeless Youth Training and Technical Assistance Conference since I joined the Family and Youth Services Bureau in 2012. And every time we've gathered here, there's an energy in the room, and I have to thank you for that. It's overwhelming at times, and I think it's been really appreciated when a lot of you have come up to me and said, this has been a really great conference, and it gets better every year, because this conference is about you and it's for you. And I think that we always strive to do better every year. And I think the importance of hearing your voices through the conference evaluations, as well as having grantees participate in the planning process, is very critical to this effort so that we make it for you and make it better for you every single year. And with that being said, there's so many people to thank for making this event happen and for it to be such a huge success. So I want to first, on behalf of the Family and Youth Services Bureau, extend the gratitude to the presenters for each of the workshop sessions, as well as the pre-institutes. So thank you all. For the young people who created and presented that beautiful mural, we thank you as well. Phenomenal effort that went into that. And to Lisa and her group at the Family Resources. So thank you for a wonderful site visit and for opening your doors to us. Really appreciate it. And for the RHY and the National Safe Place staff for organizing the event and for doing everything behind the scenes that I think some of you may not be aware of, but they've done it and it's been seamless. So thank you very much to the entire National Safe Place staff as RHY. And for the sponsors and the organizers of the grantee reception, I think that was very well received. And I won't talk about the fireworks because Debbie's already stated that it wasn't with federal dollars. And I also have to thank, first I'll start with my supervisor, Debbie Powell. I know that we've had what we call Learnovate in central office, and we saw this video of how people come back and say, this person's been instrumental in my life. And what I call it is a lollipop moment. And so there are a few people in my life that I've never had the opportunity to go back and say thank you. So I'm going to take this opportunity while she's here to say, thank you, Debbie. You've been a mentor. And there are many times when you've been my voice of reason. So I want to start with thanking you. to thank all of the FISB staff that's here and that's not here as well. This could not happen without you. The work that we do in central office and in the regions is because of you. And so I want to give a huge thank you all and shout out to all of the project officers, the program managers that are here. I know we thank Chris and Gloria in terms of their effort for putting this together, and I can't echo that enough. So thank you for the hard work that you are both doing to make this event occur and for it to be the success that it is. I also want to talk about this gathering and how it's highlighted a couple of critical points. So first, we're also recognizing the many ways that times are changing, and through some of the workshops, we've become a little bit more equipped to navigate the needs of runaway and homeless youth in these changing times. And second, we've become more committed to not just ending youth homelessness, but to making sure they have the 4 core outcomes that we've talked about, to making sure that they have housing, they're linked to employment and to education, and that they have permanent connections in their lives, and that they are physically, socially, and emotionally well. We've also learned that there's some of the strategies that will help us better serve the young people in our programs. And so as an example, we've learned more about the needs of youth who have been in foster care and those who self-identify as LGBTQ, which are the 2 groups who are especially vulnerable to becoming homeless. We've also learned more about the experience and needs of Native American youth who've been involved in sex trafficking, pregnant and parenting youth, and of rural youth. And so we've also learned more about promising practices used by a number of you who do the work on the ground, and about many specific ways we can help runaway and homeless youth. So for example, some of these workshops provided us with strategies to build trust with youth on the street through outreach, ways to ensure youth continue to receive education, even during the times when they're not stably housed, ways to meet the legal needs of runaway and homeless youth, ways to use technology to reach and assist youth in need, and methods to promote youth resilience during and after providing services to them, and so much more. We've also learned about efforts at the national level towards the strategic goal of ending youth homelessness. And we've talked at length about the federal strategic goal to prevent and end homelessness, especially for youth, and how that impacts the work that we do. So like me, I hope many of you are leaving here a little bit more motivated, a little bit more empowered, and a little bit more renewed in our commitment to changing the lives of our young people. So we know times will continue to change, but I know that each of you will continue to find innovative and effective ways to meet the needs of runaway and homeless youth and work to end homelessness for all of our young people and their families. So in closing, I want to leave you with a quote by Nelson Mandela, who said, "The children who sleep in the streets, reduced to begging to make a living, are a testimony to an unfinished job." So I know we still have a lot of work to do. And with that, I want to say safe travels to all of you, and I thank you for your time. And I'm going to turn it over to Lori Jackson, who also has some words for you as well.
Thanks, Risa. Wow, what a journey we have been on this week, right? So I do have a few announcements, a few housekeeping things to close us up. First and foremost, who wants a stipend? Really? That's not very many. All right, well, stipend forms, again, they were in your packet, so make sure that you take those with you, take them back, fill them out, attach your receipts, get them back to the RHY office, and they are due December 16th, okay? Write that date down, December 16th, so we can get that back out to you. Also, as you're getting ready to leave, many of you noticed in the lobby we had all of the banners from all of the previous years, so make sure your name gets on that banner, right? Okay. I know that folks have done a lot of thank yous, and I'm going to add to those. If you would all join me in lifting up and thanking the tremendous staff at the Trade Winds. They have done a phenomenal job for us, so they're hiding behind the curtain, but right? They took care of all of our needs and have been gracious and truly just wonderful. As the RHY Cooperative Agreement holder, we have been honored to serve at the pleasure of the Family and Youth Services Bureau. So I cannot thank enough Debbie and Risa, Chris, and particularly our Federal Practice Officer, Gloria Watkins, for all of the assistance that they have provided to us and allowed us to do this for you. So a huge thank you to you all for that. And a huge thank you to you all, right, for the work that you do as grantees, serving the young people that need our assistance, right, so that we can go out and share that there is potential. And we appreciate that. So we appreciate the opportunity to serve you. And how about a round of applause for all of those that weren't able to come, that are still back doing the work, fighting the good fight, right? And finally, and I know it's been said, but I would be remiss if I did not ask for one final round of applause for the RHY and National Safe Place team. They are at the back of the room. They have done a huge amount of work this week. For the first time, they might get to hit the beach today, so they are pleased. We thank you for being here. Thank you to Carissa. It was a very powerful message. I'm a huge crier. I'm sitting over here. She's looking at me. I'm like, oh, yeah. It's amazing. Thank you. Thank you all. Safe travels. Enjoy your time left in Florida.